Well, 2022 is over. Personally, it felt like one of the longest years of my life, but in that long amount of time, I was able to watch 40 movies that were released in 2022. And now I'm going to rank them and talk about them, but quickly because 40 is a lot of movies. So let's just jump right in. Coming in at number 40, my least favorite movie that I watched last year was the Netflix movie Do Revenge. I know some people had a lot of fun with this one, but to me, it just felt like a movie that was trying really hard to be campy, but didn't really know what camp meant, so it just felt frustrating and flat. Number 39 is Death on the Nile. My God, was this movie boring. If you watch the first 15 minutes of this movie, then pause it and guess who the killer is, I all but guarantee that you're going to be right. So then you just have to slog through 2 hours to finally reveal what you already knew. It's such a waste of its cast. Number 38 is Ticket to Paradise, and I'm genuinely upset that this is so low on the list. I love a good rom-com, but this one really had nothing new to bring to the table other than the gimmick of reuniting Julia Roberts and George Clooney. It's perfectly fine, but I do not see myself revisiting this one. Number 37 is the Disney Plus original Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. I appreciate the creativity of this one, which does kind of a modern take on Who Framed Roger Rabbit and manages not to make its constant pop culture references too annoying. But then again, I watched this movie about 6 months ago and I couldn't tell you a single thing that happened in the plot. It had to be towards the bottom of the list. Number 36 is Don't Worry, Darling. This wasn't as bad as people made it out to be with all the drama surrounding it, but it's messy and a lot of its more interesting ideas don't really go anywhere. I liked Chris Pine a lot as the villain, but at the end of the day, this movie thinks it's doing a lot more than it actually is. Number 35 is Kimmy, which was released on HBO Max and I think somehow made the New York Times top 10 movies of the year list. This had enough plot for a short film, but not a feature-length one, and for a thriller, it's really not that tense. It's decent for being clearly filmed during the pandemic, but it really didn't hook me. Number 34 is the Netflix movie Spiderhead. I had read the short story this one was based on, so I was intrigued. And the first half is actually a pretty engaging sci-fi movie. Unfortunately, the second half is not able to sustain that momentum and it becomes really boring. But more Chris Hemsworth playing charismatic sleazeballs would be great. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is coming in at number 33. This had some clever inversions of what you'd expect from a slasher movie, but pretty much any movie or show that tries to write Gen Z dialogue inevitably just sounds corny and condescending, and none of the characters in this were all that easy to root for. Number 32 is Men, which was another big disappointment for me. I love Ex Machina and Annihilation, so I had really high hopes for Alex Garland doing a straight horror film, but this didn't really come to much. Like Spiderhead, I was actually pretty drawn in by the first half, but completely turned off by the second. The body horror stuff at the end is cool, but I didn't really get what the point was. Number 31 is See How They Run. I love a good murder mystery. I love Saoirse Ronan. I love Sam Rockwell. So I really wanted this to be better than it was, but most of the jokes don't land and the pacing is really off. I've seen the play The Mousetrap, so I got some enjoyment out of the clever twists surrounding the plot of that play. But if you haven't seen the play, I really don't think you would get anything out of this movie. Number 30 is the Hulu movie Rosaline. Caitlin Dever is one of my favorites, and she's perfect as a comedy romance lead. And this movie is perfectly sweet, but nothing special. The gay best friend character made me roll my eyes, but it is a cute subversion of the Romeo and Juliet story with an engaging protagonist. Worth a watch, but not great. Number 28. No, I feel like that's wrong. Number 29 is Thor, Love and Thunder. Yes, this was a huge step down from Thor Ragnarok, but I thought it had its moments, and the design of the Shadow Realm was really cool and worth seeing in the theater. I just don't personally connect with Jane as a character at all, so the whole movie never really came together for me. Here's where most people are going to think I'm crazy, because at number 28, I have Top Gun Maverick. I truly do not understand the hype around this movie. Like, yes, the stuff in the airplanes is really cool, but the story is bad, and overall, it's not really any better than the first movie, which didn't receive anywhere near as much critical praise as this one did. Tom Cruise should have been a supporting player, not the lead, but you know, he's Tom Cruise, so that's never going to happen. Number 27 is the Netflix release The Wonder. Florence Pugh is wonderful in this, and it's a fascinating historical examination of science versus religion, but it's not quite interesting enough to sustain itself for the entire runtime. This movie also has the weirdest framing device I've ever seen, and that knocked it further down my list. Number 26 is The Lost City. This movie was a lot of fun, even if it's not amazing. I've missed seeing Channing Tatum in movies recently, and he's absolutely at his best when he's playing a dumb but charming man like he is here. Everyone in the movie is clearly having a great time, and there's some genuine laughs in it. Number 25 is another Netflix movie, Wendell and Wild. The classic Henry Selick style of animation goes really well with the story being told, but there's so many ideas happening in the plot that they aren't really able to dedicate enough time to each one. And just on a personal level, this style of animation kind of makes me uncomfortable, so I'm never going to love movies that look like this. Number 24 is X, which I know a lot of people really loved. I had a good time with some of the slasher kills, but I wish there was a bit more meat to the plot. Maybe I missed the significance of having Mia Goth play multiple roles, but it felt more impressive than necessary to me. It's a fun, classic horror movie, but not one that I really connected with. Number 23 is Emily the Criminal. I love the year that Aubrey Plaza has had, and I think she's excellent in this, and it does a really great job of building tension. But I also thought the main character makes way too many stupid decisions for me to be fully on her side. I do love a 90-minute movie, though. Number 22 is Lightyear. I think this movie got a bit of an unfair reputation. Like, yes, it is totally unnecessary, and I would rather see Pixar put new original content into theaters, but this is very cute and a good time. Also, I would die for socks, and if you're telling me that Andy didn't want a socks toy to go with his Buzz Lightyear toy, I do not believe you. Rounding out the bottom half of my list is The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent at number 21. I had pretty low expectations for this, since it seemed like the premise of Nick Cage playing himself could only go so far, but this was a lot of fun, and I loved the bromance between Cage and Pedro Pascal's characters. Honestly, it was a lot better than it had any right to be. Halfway there, number 20 is The Good Nurse, which was another Netflix release. Jessica Chastain and Eddie Redmayne both give excellent performances in this movie, and I found it pretty gripping for being about as low-key as a serial killer movie can be. At number 19, we have Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. It's hard to criticize this film knowing that they had to completely pivot after the death of Chadwick Boseman, but it still has to be said that it feels kind of like two movies that don't mesh perfectly. Even so, the journeys of grief that Letitia Wright and Angela Bassett's characters go on are very powerful, and yes, I did cry. Back-to-back blockbusters here, with number 18 being Avatar: The Way of Water. I respect this movie more than I necessarily enjoyed it. It's way too long for the story it's telling, but the visuals are obviously stunning, and the last hour was some of the most exciting action I've seen on the big screen in a while. So, never bet against James Cameron. At number 17, we have the other Pixar release from this year, Turning Red. I wish this had been the theatrical release and Lightyear had been on Disney+, but alas. This story about inheriting generational trauma and learning to communicate with your family is poignant, and I'm glad that they did not squander the opportunity to have a Godzilla-sized red panda. Number 16 is ELVIS, which really surprised me. I usually dislike musical biopics because they're so formulaic, and I don't generally vibe with Baz Luhrmann, but his style worked really well with Elvis as the subject, and Tom Hanks' character added a new angle to the traditional rock star story. Austin Butler is excellent, and out of respect, I will no longer refer to him as Vanessa Hudgens' ex-boyfriend. Number 15 is Bros, because some people did go see your movie, Billy Eichner. I thought this one did a really good job of fitting into the traditional rom-com structure, but still updating it to be specific to the gay experience. It's genuinely funny, and Luke McFarlane is stunning to look at, so really, what more could you want? At number 14, we have She Said, the story of the New York Times exposing Harvey Weinstein. This was really gripping and emotional, and I thought it handled its subject matter really gracefully, but including some of the famous names involved in the story while dancing around others was slightly jarring. It's good, but it's not like spotlight levels of good. Number 13 is Glass Onion. I loved Knives Out. It's one of those movies I'll watch over and over again, and I think this is a worthy sequel, if not necessarily quite as good as the first one. I have so much fun with how Rian Johnson subverts the typical structure of a murder mystery, and the cast is just stellar and so much fun to watch. Many more of these, please. At number 12 is The Menu. I went into this expecting a horror movie and was pleasantly surprised that instead it's just a pitch black comedy. I think I smiled through the entirety of this movie. The satire is ridiculously over the top while also being biting. Actually, this is kind of a great companion piece to Glass Onion. I'm scheduling a double feature of those two right now. The Batman is number 11 on my list. It actually feels like this came out way more than a year ago, but I had such a great theatrical experience watching this. It was a 3-hour movie that just flew by for me, and the car chase sequence was absolutely one of the most exciting moments I had in a movie theater this year. I'm fully on board with more Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz in the Batman universe. Whew, okay, we've reached the top 10, starting with Good Luck to You, Leo Grand. Emma Thompson really got screwed over by the release strategy for this movie because she is phenomenal in it and deserves more attention. I love a one-room characters talking type of movie, and this one is so funny and so sweet. Definitely check it out if it flew under your radar. Another Hulu release at number 9 is Fire Island. I am a sucker for a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but I also laughed so loudly at this movie that my roommates had to text me and ask if I was okay. The cast, again, is having so much fun, and it's infectious. I can't wait to watch this movie over and over again. Number 8 is Petite Maman. I talked about this one in my Hidden Gems on Streaming Services video. It's so tender and lovely, and it manages to pack so much powerful stuff about grief and growing up into such a short and simple film. Watching this movie feels like getting a warm hug, and really, that's all I ask. Number 7 is After Yang. This movie is absolutely beautiful. Every single shot is positioned so deliberately, and the camera work consistently took my breath away. Like Petite Maman, this movie is deceptively simple and slow, but it raises a lot of questions about family and identity that it explores in really fascinating ways. At number 6, we have The Fabelmans. Watching this movie and thinking about Steven Spielberg recreating all the home movies he made as a kid made me feel so happy. And this really is a love letter for anyone who feels that movies have touched or changed their lives in some ways. The performances are across the board wonderful, and it's just my kind of movie. Top 5, baby. Number 5 for me is Nope. I loved Get Out in part because of how thematically tight and clean it is, but it's so cool to now see Jordan Peele working on a larger scale, exploring bigger themes, and leaving them open-ended. I thought about the implications of this movie for days after seeing it, and also just had a really fun time while watching it. At number 4 is The Banshees of Inisherin. I love Martin McDonagh's movies, and I especially love Colin Farrell in Martin McDonagh movies, so this was a home run for me. The premise of a friendship deteriorating is so simple, but Farrell and But Farrell and Brendan Gleeson give it so much depth through their performances, and it becomes monumental. It went places I didn't expect it to, but it always stayed true to the tone and the story it had established. I think this is McDonagh's best work yet, and I can't wait to see what he does next. At number 3, we have Everything Everywhere All at Once. This movie was such a surprise and a delight when I first saw it. It's wholly original and off the balls bonkers in all the best ways. I watch it and just think about what the pitch meeting for this movie must have been like. And yet it manages to be wildly fun and inventive while also having a really powerful story about an immigrant family coming to understand one another. I'm just saying, I didn't expect to cry at Inanimate Rocks during 2022, but this movie did that to me. Number 2 is Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. We don't deserve Marcel, but he is exactly the hero we need right now. This movie is so pure and heartfelt, it's hard to put into words. I didn't know how they were going to turn some YouTube shorts into a feature film, but Marcel is so clearly a character whom his creators love so much, and that love just radiates off the screen. The story is touching, and I absolutely bawled my eyes out for the last 20 minutes of this movie. There aren't enough movies that are just pure happiness and heart, and I really appreciated this movie for being that just when I needed it. And my favorite movie of 2022 was Tar. Me loving a movie where Cate Blanchett plays an intimidating lesbian, it's more likely than you might think. This movie starts with an extended interview sequence where Lydia Tarr is talking about classical music, and even though I don't care about classical music at all, I could have watched that interview for hours. Cate Blanchett is absolutely captivating in this role, and it's really fascinating to watch her character deteriorate. It's easy to say that this is a movie about cancel culture, but it's more a movie about a woman having to deal with the consequences of her own actions, and it's executed masterfully. This was another one I was thinking about for days after seeing it, and I can't wait to watch it again. So that's my 2022 list. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite movies from 2022 were, and here's to another great year of movie watching in 2023. Bye!